no, I'm serious. If we're going to have the honest conversation that you're calling for, then I call on you to be honest and make a negative generalization about any other racial or ethnic group in this country. Go ahead.
I'm merely skeptical at why this makes our country less safe. I don't actually think that you can show that. I think you're just mad about it. These are real adult questions, and you're blowing them off by describing anyone who doesn't agree with you as motivated by prejudice. You pretend that you know, but you don't know. I'm open-minded. You are not. And we're out of time, unfortunately.
Yeah, because you don't know what you're talking about. You want to have like a reasonable conversation, and you can't. White supremacy. It's too frustrating.
Some of them explicitly support communism.
I don't know. You're saying that Russia's...
Does anybody think it's worth dying for Slovakia? Not one person. You're giving me a history lesson. The left has run out of possible verbal attacks on President Trump. There are none left. All that's left is violence, and some on the left appear to be encouraging that.
Okay, so before you make generalizations based on race, which, as you know, is itself racist.
Interview over. I am Tucker Carlson, and this is my class.
I had about 4 more clips that I was going to do illustrating all of these different Tucker tactics, but I had to cut some of those because this is too much material. Instead, I'm going to go into the home stretch of just what I think is the creme de la creme of Tucker tactics and him being trounced and flailing and failing while his fans think it's a huge victory over the libtards. After looking through all of these clips, I thought that this one was the best example of Tucker being outclassed in every way and trying to employ some of his sleaziest tactics and them just absolutely miserably falling on their face. Just insulting the guest because he couldn't get a hold. This guest was obviously significantly more informed and intelligent than he was, and he didn't know how to cope with it, so he tried his best to denigrate the guest, insult them, and put them down and make them look fringe, and it just didn't work. So I present to you the incredible Tucker Carlson versus Lucien Greaves.
He's encouraging its followers to find Christian bakers and ask them to bake cakes honoring the Prince of Darkness as a show of support for gay couples who've been denied cakes for weddings. Lucien Greaves is the co-founder of the Satanic Temple in Massachusetts, and he joins us tonight. Lucien Greaves, thank you for coming on tonight.
Thank you.
I'm of mixed views on this. I mean, part of me wants to take it seriously because there are real legal questions here, but then part of me wants to tell the truth, which is you're just a troll.
Well, look at his eyes. He looks like a freak. Tucker's gonna wreck this dude.
And working out your unhappy childhood.
You're going to have to define for me what you think a credible religion is at this point, and then maybe you should thank organizations like Liberty Counsel or the Alliance Defending Freedom when they put forward legal cases claiming that they're taking a religious point of view, and the Supreme Court just taking those at face value. The fact of the matter is we do have affirmative values. These are an expression of our deeply held beliefs. And I think that's all anybody really needs.
Yeah, I mean, we've had this conversation before, and you, right, yeah, blah, blah, blah.
Already, I think Tucker's fucked up by just assuming that this guy has nothing to say and has no valid points. He's basically like, you're part of the Satanic Temple, and Satanism is stupid, and you're a troll, so I can't take you seriously. And the guy's just like, well, you know, I do have serious points. And it's Tucker's downfall to just assume that he has no points and nothing intelligent to say. Yeah, blah, 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 whatever, you know, you're saying, like, just because you're the Satanic Temple, you get to say that you're religious. And so you have to have, like, rights and stuff, too. Like, psh, bullshit. 'Cause you're weird and I don't believe you. Then what? If he says that Satanism is a religion, his religion should have all of the allowances that other religions have, whether or not you like it. What has it got to do about whether you think he's being honest about it or not? Is your opinion about his trollness or lack of trollness what's going to decide his religious liberty?
But I mean, in the end, this is about getting publicity and hassling people. If you really have sincere beliefs and you're
publicity to what end? It's publicity towards issues we truly do.
I honestly think, not to play shrink, but it has to do with what was clearly an unhappy childhood that you had. But I guess my question is,
you had an unhappy childhood. Why is he so threatened by this guest? And I think Lucien does an awesome job of just completely rebuking everything Tucker has to say to the point that Tucker has nothing but insults.
If you have these sincere beliefs, if this is a real religion, then why not practice it why waste all this time bothering other people who are minding their own business?
Are you saying why don't we practice it in private and in our own churches and in our own homes? Because then I would say I'm completely on board with you, and that's exactly pretty much the message we're putting out. You don't see us going into public forums where there isn't already religious representation. What we're doing is we're upholding pluralism. And even in the case with the cakes...
No, you're not upholding pluralism. You're going and you're seeking out people to bother, and you're
we're not seeking out people to bother. We're not...
This is a bit like the causing offense argument. Like, you're bothering people. You're not being civil. You're not being nice to people. How is that an argument?
Do you ever have an evangelical on and ask them why they need to force their Bibles into schools, why they need to put up a cross on public property when they have churches all over the place? I mean, when you open up that public forum, you have to be prepared for
what they're not doing is
what they're not doing is
showing up at your house and saying, you know, say the Lord's Prayer with me, Lucien Greaves, and if you don't, then I'm going to sue you, or I'm going to get the government to launch a suit against you. You say you and your followers, to the extent you have any.
He has to throw in like all these little insults, to the extent you have any, like whatever, no one likes you. You know, you're a loser. And I love Lucien's expressions. He's just like, he's loving this.
Are seeking out small businesses that don't want to accommodate you in order to force them to violate their own beliefs. That's my understanding.
It highlights a disparity. The fact is that religion is a protected class, sexual orientation is not. If you want to be able to deny people service, fine, let's be consistent. The gay hairdresser shouldn't have to dress the hair of the evangelical theocrat who wouldn't serve him a cake. Then we're on an equal level. Then that's okay.
I'm fine with that. I mean, I think if it's your business and you're being asked to violate your beliefs, I think, and they're sincere beliefs,
this does bring up some troubling questions, though, about protected classes and race.
It does bring up. It does actually. Yes.
They come to some kind of agreement, but of course, it's Tucker Carlson. So he has to come back around to the insults.
Then the gay baker shouldn't be forced to make a cake for the evangelical theocrat. And then I'm fine with that.
I kind of agree. I actually kind of agree with that. But here's the difference. I haven't seen a single case of an evangelical forcing any kind of bakery to bake a cake that violates the baker's personal beliefs. And if there was such a case, I would come down on the side of the bakery, because why don't you back off and let people live their lives? In fact, why don't you do that, Lucien Greaves,
right, exactly,
if indeed that's your real name?
But you can't, because religion is a protected class. So
yeah, whatever.
Either take
you're
away
making
the
a nonsensical point, and I think you should crawl back into your hole. Thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
I think you should crawl back into your hole. So thanks for joining us. And anyways, that's the end of Tucker tonight. Damn, that is such a Tucker technique, isn't it? Throw in some insult before you go to the next segment or finish the show. That's just a classic Tucker interview, basically just appealing to his audience to think, look at that guy, he's so weird and he's a Satanist, so therefore close your brain, don't listen to a single thing he's saying about the fact that if religion is going to be given this special treatment, then it's going to have to apply also to religions that you don't like Satanism. Why shouldn't there be a giant pentagram next to a manger of Jesus? I mean, both Christianity and Satanism come from Christianity. The main problem I have with Satanism is that it's actually using a Christian construct. It's using the fictional story of Satan to make points against religion, unless they're taking it seriously, in which case, total clowns. Like, it's just absurd. But I think the organization Lucien Greaves is part of is simply using it to make the point that you can't discriminate against religions just because you don't like them. And that if you think Christianity should have special allowances, so should Satanism. And I think that's fantastic point. I think at their heart, that organization is secular and atheistic. Just thought I'd add my 2 cents on that. Now, the second to last Tucker masterclass is between Tucker and Amer Zahr. Let's have a look.
Amer Zahr is a professor at the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law. He says that ban is nothing more than white supremacy. Zahr joins us tonight. Professor, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
So how is it white supremacy, that ban?
Well, it's basically the continuation of Trump's rhetoric, but it comes from the whole history of sort of white supremacist immigration law that we've had actually since the founding of this country. You had to be white in order to be naturalized from 1790 until 1952. And so that was the law for the vast majority of the history of this country. And what Trump is trying to do is go back to that with many laws, and especially with this Muslim ban.
So this conversation is basically everything you would expect. Tucker being like, how is it white supremacy? And the guy saying, well, you know, he's trying to prevent the brownification of America. And then, oh, that's racist. That's insulting.
I bet you probably weren't born too much before 1965. And since then, we've had about 90% of all immigrants into this country have been non-white. Now, that may be a lot of things. That's not white supremacy. So that's over 50 years of 90% of the immigrants are non-white. It's not white supremacy. Sure. It's like anything but that,
it's definitely,
right?
It's definitely true. I'm not saying that what Trump is trying to stop that, right? What Trump is trying to do is to stop the brownification of America. That's what he ran on. He ran on sort of the anxiety of many white Americans that this country is becoming more diverse.
Okay, so before you make generalizations based on race, which is, you know, is itself racist.
The classic Tucker. That's racist.
Let me just ask you, what percentage white, so it's a little less than 10% white now, okay? Our immigration breakdown. What percentage would Trump like to get it to achieve this white supremacy that you're barking about? Please be specific.
That's not the point.
You seem to know a lot
that's
about
not the
this.
point.
Oh, it is very much the
that's
point.
Not,
no, it's very much the point. You just accused him of white. You just accused him of white. No, well, slow down. You accused him of white supremacy. So why don't you be specific and explain to me what that would look like? What percentage white is he trying to get our immigration numbers to?
He told us what it would look like when he was in the Oval Office and he called black countries S-hole countries and why can't we get more people from Norway? He told us exactly what he was envisioning, right? When he wants to stop, when he wants to...
No, you are a demagogue who is not actually... No, he didn't. He said specifically... two specific countries, not all black countries, but I'm just asking.
I didn't say all
what
black
is his
countries.
Plan? Like,
I didn't say all black countries. I said the countries that he called, the countries that he called S-hole countries were black countries. And then he said, why can't we have more people from Norway? We don't need him to be explicit, right? It's clear how he's talking.
So how would
it's clear when he tells us that Islam hates us, and when he tells us that he wants to ban all Muslims, just because he writes an executive order that seems facially neutral doesn't mean that he's not actually exercising that intent.
Wait, okay, so Islam is a race now. Is that what you're saying?
Is Islam a race? Islam is not really a race, is it? So how is the travel ban racist? Which is really weird to me because if you say, is Islam a race in response to the travel ban, you are buying the narrative that it is a Muslim ban. And I thought they were trying to deny that and say it was a travel ban. So putting that aside, the guy basically makes the argument that something can be a stand-in for race, such as when Trump called a bunch of countries shithole countries and they were black countries, and then Tucker's all like, oh, they just happen to be black, you know, that's just a coinky-dink. But the interview increasingly devolved because Tucker was getting increasingly flustered and insulted and uptight, as he tends to do, and getting more insulting. And it's basically always Tucker who throws the first insult. Just take a look.
He told us he played on these things. I mean, you're giving him more credit than he deserves. You're trying to put words into his mouth that he didn't say.
What I'm asking you is someone who is making regular...
No. I'm only talking about Trump, to be clear. I'm going to give you one more chance.
It's so frustrating to talk to someone as dumb as you, but let me just try to pinpoint what you're saying.
It's so frustrating to talk to someone as dumb as you. You're dumb. Dumb. And that's when you know that Tucker's just lost the plot. He doesn't know what argument to make here. It's just like, you're dumb. Because the guy said, like, you're giving Trump too much credit. I guess that's mildly insulting. Like, you just be like, I'm not doing that. Well, you're dumb. Dumb. And then that's a wrap. It's over. Like, the conversation is not going to go anywhere. And I hate to use this phraseology because I know that, like, being triggered is a real thing, which actually is about, like, childhood trauma and abuse and sexual abuse and all of these terrible things. But I'm gonna have to say it. Tucker is like, oh, I'm so triggered by this. Oh, get off. Go away. Oh my God.
Well, you're purposely... Listen, Tucker, I know that you agree with Trump's white supremacist policies. I know that you want this country to...
Stop. They're actually going crazy. You want to have like a reasonable conversation, and you can't. White supremacy. It's too frustrating.
You're making arguments that I can't refute, and so you're dumb. I'm triggered. Get off.
It's too frustrating.
Look at that interview. Look at how calm and composed and relaxed the guy that he's fighting with is, and then look at how right-wing sources characterize it. Tucker crushed and destroyed and wrecked this guy, but Tucker is a guy who ends the conversation by going, "Rah! White supremacy! Ah!" How is Tucker the one who came out on top of that? And Tucker's also the guy who insulted him first. He said that he was dumb. So the guy was like, look, I know that you agree with Donald Trump's white supremacist policies, which, yeah, that's insulting. That's kind of like an insult. And Tucker's like, oh, I can't take being insulted! Even though he called the guy dumb first. Like, classic Tucker. To round out the video, here is just Tucker being completely outclassed, and maybe he was tired that day because he couldn't come up with anything. Democratic socialism. It's a really, really, really bad thing. It's like Mao and Stalin and Lenin and Marx all got together and had an orgy and had a crazy baby thing which fucked Justin Trudeau and came out as democratic socialism. So that's gonna be an easy thing to totally destroy with facts and logic and reason and conservative logic, smart power. Let's see it. Time to die, democratic socialism.
So we thought it was a perfect moment to speak to possibly the most famous of all advocates for democratic socialism, Cornel West. He's a professor at Harvard. He's an honorary co-chair of the Democratic Socialists of America, and he joins us tonight. Cornel, thank you for coming on.
No, thank you, and it's good to be in dialogue with you once again, though, brother.
Yes, it is. So to give us some sense of what democratic socialism is, can you point to an example, an extant example of it that works? Venezuela seems like an example of democratic socialism. Would you say that it is? And if so, does it work?
No, I don't think that democratic socialism as an ideal has been able to be embodied in a larger social context. There's different forms of it. Some are bad, some are medium, some are better. But the fundamental commitment is to the dignity of ordinary people and to make sure they can live lives of decency.
Has it struck you as interesting that it's never actually worked anywhere? So the question is not what are our goals. Our goals are the same. How do we get there is the question. So what happened in Venezuela? They call that democratic socialism, but they don't have toilet paper, and it's less equal than ever.
But part of the problem is, though, brother, that any time there's been the attempts of ordinary people to engage in self-determination, they can get crushed by external nations. Look at U.S. policies toward Venezuela has been very, very ugly. Nicaragua in the same way. We saw that in so many other instances where countries tried to engage in self-determination and they either get crushed, they either get coerced, and they end up oftentimes responding to that kind of authoritarian treatment. So we've never had a chance to really pull it off. So it's only been a movement so far. It's an attempt to resist the greed at the top, the racism, the sexism, the homophobia, the various ways in which humanity is violated rather than affirmed.
Now this is part of why Tucker was outclassed in this conversation, that he couldn't think of a response to Cornel West saying, no, it's never really succeeded, it gets crushed, it gets overtaken. Which is the argument that frankly I would make as a disgusting sellout progressive liberal, which is that socialism is not sustainable because it doesn't have the durability and it doesn't have the necessary structures to protect itself from outside influence and other forces which are more powerful, and that is the reason why it generally implodes. And there are no excellent examples of a kind of socialist or democratic socialist state which has been able to maintain itself against capitalist forces. That would be an incredibly good angle to take this from, I think, in my opinion, because it's something I agree with. But instead Tucker goes in this direction. Venezuela doesn't have toilet paper, and then it's just like, well, you know, I've already said that democratic socialism doesn't currently exist as an ideal, so what does Venezuela have to do with it?
So if a government's obligation is to its own citizens, and you drop the borders and have no border enforcement at all, what would happen to this country? What would happen to the poor people in this country? Would their lives get better? Would they become more prosperous? No. This country would become poorer, dirtier, impossible to manage. It would be flooded with the poor of the world, and it would destroy our country instantly. So why would you say no borders?
Well, I mean, again, no, you got a variety of voices in the Democratic Socialists of America. We like a jazz orchestra. You got different perspectives and orientations. We all don't agree on one particular policy all the time. This is true in terms of Israeli occupation of Palestinians. Some are in the middle, some are much more critical, like myself.
A rainbow of views. We've got people who want no borders. We've got people who want regulated borders. We got other more bordery people, like it's so great. And Tucker's just like,
the question is, how do you keep track of the rich humanity of Mexican brothers and sisters, of those coming from Latin America, those coming from Africa, those coming from Haiti, and those coming from Europe and Asia? That's the important thing. We know the history of America, other than indigenous peoples and Africans who've been enslaved, was to open the borders, to bring folk in, to allow people to gain access. But it's not a matter of no borders at all. It's a matter of how do you ensure that their dignity is affirmed when they arrive, so that you don't end up having the kind of neo-fascist policies of the Trump administration, separating these precious children from their mothers and fathers.
That's silly, as you well know.
and that's my argument, you know, separating children from their parents as neo-fascist. That's silly. Like, wow, this guy is such a towering intellect and pillar of rationality and logic. Crushed.
I don't believe in just no borders myself. It's a question of making sure their dignity is affirmed when they get here.
Then you got to get a hold of the DSA of New York's Twitter account, because they're saying some pretty reckless
we got a number of voices in DSA. I love them. We believe in disagreement. We believe in disagreement. You were just talking about disagreement in terms of defending civil liberties. I believe in protecting civil liberties. Yours, mine, Page's, Bernie Sanders, Mumia Abu-Jabal's, a whole host of folk. But we have to be consistent. It can't just be right wing.
You always lose me at the end, Cornel. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you will come back. Cornel West.
He can't come up with any reasonable points against democratic socialism except that Venezuela is bad. That's the only thing he can think of. And you've seen that with them trying to attack Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Her views, her policy positions are actually downright scary. Look, by the way, he was a guy that was supposed to take over for Nancy Pelosi, perhaps. Look very carefully. This is the future. This is your modern Democratic Party. Cortez, who will likely win the general election in a Democratic district, is pushing for, let's see, single-payer universal health care, universal jobs, government-subsidized housing for everybody, tuition, free colleges. She wants to abolish ICE and, of course, impeach President Trump.
Oh, my God!
They very much struggle to come up with reasons why she's bad or what she thinks is bad. So that's my video, or videos. I just wanted to take a look at Tucker Carlson because I find him very entertaining for the worst possible reasons. Next time you're watching Tucker Carlson, try to do a little bingo tally of what Tucker techniques he's using. Is he strawmanning?
You could choose to kick a homeless man. That doesn't mean that it's right.
Yeah, but that's a straw man argument that you're putting up there.
Is it nearing the end of the interview so he starts insulting them? Is he denigrating their publication or position? Is he playing the victim and acting like it's an affront to him? Is he accusing them of being racist? Is he acting like he's too stupid or doesn't understand what the other person is saying?
What are you saying? I mean, I don't actually even understand what you're saying.
Is he throwing in an insult right before he cuts the guest off?
All right, I got to go. You should stick to the thigh-high boots. You're better at that. Lauren, thanks for joining us.
You're a second.
Is he getting offended? Is he getting flustered? And is he just generally being a twat? Challenge yourself at home. Thank you.